A New Brunswick town has caved to the radical voices who think celebrating and commemorating those who have fought for their country equates to jingoism and militarism and the glorification of war. This isn't a discussion about the Victoria councillor who made a similar push a couple of weeks ago, although that was another example of this pervasive mentality that seems to be sweeping the country. No, this is a new case. The Sackville, New Brunswick mayor has decided to put on hold the installation of a donated armored vehicle into a park. This goes back to February when the 8th Canadian Hussars donated a retired armored military vehicle to Sackville. The Cougar was to be displayed at Memorial Park, a monument to serve as a tribute to fallen members of the 8th Canadian Hussars who came from that part of the country, and specifically that town. And since February, no one really put up too much of a fuss until a bunch of NIMBY types started seeing a concrete pad being installed in the park and decided to raise a fuss. And people made any number of asinine claims. Look at this CBC story, for example, calling it a controversial armored vehicle. Well, just because people have decided to make themselves into fools opposing it doesn't mean the vehicle itself is actually a source of controversy. It's a source of honor and commemoration. But again, residents were saying, no, we agree that veterans should be commemorated, but not in that way. Jessica Grew said, I don't feel that it's the best way for a memorial park to commemorate veterans and those affected by war. Alex Thomas said in a Global article, it's important to recognize the regiment's long connection with the town and the 55 members who died fighting fascism in Italy, but the Cougar is a modern vehicle that represents military violence. Anyone who thinks that it represents military violence should actually take a little bit of time and speak to a veteran about this. Jim Lockyer, who's the honorary colonel of the 8th Canadian Hussars, says the vehicle is about serving as a monument to the tragedy of war, which is the precise opposite of glorifying war. You know, I mentioned in my video about that Victoria councillor that the freedom to be an idiot actually comes from the men and women who have fought in uniform, the people who laid down their lives for their country. But there's also a necessity to push back here. When we stop with these symbols and icons and monuments, you actually lose one of the greatest tools that gets people to start asking questions about these things. I live in a city where one of the most legendary tanks in Canadian history is on display, the Holy Roller at Victoria Park in London, Ontario. One of the tanks that was involved in the D-Day invasion that we just celebrated the 75th anniversary of. And as a young man, that was a tank that I would see and otherwise not know about. And it was actually something that gave me a connection to a tremendously significant part of my country's history, and in particular, my city's history. Anyone who wants to take that away is not denying the glorification of war. They're actually denying the ability to honor and commemorate and understand the history that has allowed us to be the beacon of freedom that we are. For True North, I'm Andrew Lawton.